Nobody serious about AI thinks it's risk-free. The people who are building sustainable businesses with these tools are not the ones who decided the risks do not exist. They're the ones who looked at the risks directly, understood what they were dealing with, and made conscious decisions about how to proceed. And in this episode, we'll help you with that by showing how you can get a clear-eyed look at what you're working with so you can work with it well. Welcome back to Omnia Mea Compass. I'm Susan Platt, and this is Season 3, Build Smart with AI. And we're recording at early June 2026. We're at episode 7 of this season, and I want to say something before we go any further. If you have been listening along, you will know that this season has been pro-AI in tone. Not uncritically so, but genuinely, and that's because I use these tools and I believe they've made my work better and my weeks more manageable. I'm not going to pretend otherwise, but being pro-AI and being clear-eyed about its risks are not opposites. If anything, the more you use these tools, the more important it becomes to understand where they can go wrong, what they can cost you if you use them carelessly, and what decisions need to remain yours regardless of how capable the tool becomes. And a word to women listening. Before I get into the specific risks, I want to say something directly to the women in this audience. Because there's a particular version of AI risk aversion that I see playing out right now, and I think it deserves some attention. The gender gap in technology is not new, and it is nuanced. And it does not only exist at the level of who builds the tools or who works in the industry. It exists also in how comfortable people feel using them. The comfort zone. Research consistently shows that women are significantly less likely to describe themselves as confident technology users, less likely to experiment with new tools, and more likely to underestimate their own capabilities in technical contexts. The same pattern is appearing with AI. Reshma Saujani, the founder of Girls Who Code and author of Brave Not Perfect, which was published in 2019, spent years documenting why this happens. And her argument is not that women are less capable, it is that they've been taught differently. From very early in life, her research shows that girls have been predominantly socialized to be careful, accurate, and risk-averse. To get things right rather than to try things, and to seek approval rather than to experiment. Boys, by contrast, are broadly socialized to be brave, to try things, and to learn through getting things wrong. So we can infer from all of this that the relationships different genders have with technology are not necessarily due to nature, but are very often due to the individual's context or culture. And those cultures, therefore, are bound to produce adults with very different relationships to new, uncertain, and potentially fallible tools. AI is exactly the kind of tool this dynamic plays out with. It is powerful, it's unfamiliar, and it is not immediately clear what the consequences of using it incorrectly might be. For someone who has been taught their whole life that mistakes are serious and that caution is a virtue, that combination can produce a paralysis that has nothing to do with capability and everything to do with conditioning. I have a personal memory that comes back to me every time I talk about this. I grew up in Switzerland, and I remember clearly when the first ATMs appeared. My mom asked me to go with her, like the very first time she used one, not because she did not understand how it worked, but she was afraid that if she pressed the wrong button, she might somehow wipe out her entire account. She needed someone there as insurance against catastrophic error that was never ever in any realistic sense going to happen. Now, my mom was an intelligent woman, and that fear was not a reflection of her intelligence. It was a reflection of how she had been taught to relate to powerful systems that she had not been given permission to simply try. The fear of the irreversible mistake. The sense that the tool was not quite hers to touch until she was certain she knew exactly what she was doing. So, if you're a woman listening to this and you have felt something like that around I want you to know that what you are feeling is not a personal failing. It is a thoroughly predictable response to a lifetime of being taught that getting things wrong is more costly for you than it is for men around you. Reshma Saujani's work shows that this is one of the most significant things holding women back from the opportunities that technology creates. Not lack of aptitude, not lack of intelligence, but a cultivated fear of imperfection that makes experimentation feel dangerous. And here is what I want to offer in response to that. This episode is about real AI risks, specific, named, concrete things that can go wrong and how to address them. My intention is that by the time you finish listening, you will know exactly what the genuine risks are and therefore what they are not. Because the thing about the ATM was not that there was no risk, it was the actual risk was nothing like the imagined one. My mom was not going to wipe out the account, but she did not know that yet because nobody had told her specifically what could and could not go wrong by using the ATM. That is what I'm going to do today. Tell you specifically so that the fear, if it is there, is proportionate to the reality rather than to the imagination. Today, we're going to navigate through 3 core waypoints again, covering 5 specific risk areas. This is not supposed to frighten you, but to help you become a more informed, more intentional user of the tools you're already working with. Here's the structure. In Waypoint 1, we will cover privacy and data. What happens to the information you put into an AI tool and why it matters. In Waypoint 2, we will look at accuracy and hallucination when AI states things confidently and incorrectly. And in Waypoint 3, we will cover the risks that are less obvious but just as significant. Over-reliance, skill erosion, and the question of who owns the content you create with AI. Let's get into it. Waypoint 1, privacy and data. This is the risk most people know about in theory and underestimate in practice. The question is simple. When you type something into an AI tool, where does it go? The honest answer is, and if you're a regular listener, you won't be surprised to hear me say this, it depends. In this case, it depends entirely on which tool you're using, and most people have not checked. Let's be honest. Many major AI tools, particularly on free tiers or default settings, may use your conversation for model improvement unless you opt out. And this means that the text you type or the documents you upload, the client context you share, the business strategy you're thinking through out loud may become part of model improvement or training pipelines depending on the tool and settings. It does not get published anywhere with your name on it, but it is no longer exclusively yours. And it has been processed and potentially incorporated into the model in ways that are not fully transparent. For most casual use, this is a theoretical concern rather than a practical one. But for entrepreneurs, there are categories of information where this matters significantly. Client names, project details, financial information, health information, proprietary processes, anything that is confidential in a professional or legal sense. These are things you should not be typing into an Amber-rated tool without stopping to think first. In episode 2, our AI Starter Kit episode, we introduced a simple privacy rating system for the 8 tools in the kit. One tool received a green rating, Lumo, the Swiss privacy-first AI assistant built by the Proton team. Every other tool in the kit received an amber rating. Now, amber does not mean dangerous. It means proceed with conscious attention. Know what you're putting in. Read the privacy policy. Understand the data handling defaults. Using the tool for the purpose it serves well, and keep confidential information out of it unless you have confirmed it is handled appropriately. That framework still stands. Today, we're going deeper into why it matters and what the specific risks look like in practice. The practical version of this risk looks like this. You are preparing for a meeting. You paste some background about the client, their business situation, and what they have shared with you in confidence into a major AI tool to help you structure your thinking. And the tool produces something useful. You close the tab and move on. But what you did not check is whether you opted into data sharing by default when you created the account, and whether the tool you used allows you to opt out, and whether your terms of engagement with that client include any confidentiality obligations that this practice might breach. None of this is designed to make you stop using AI tools. It is designed to make you pause before you paste. The habit that protects you is simple. Before you share anything professionally sensitive, ask yourself which tool you're using and what you know about how that tool handles your data. If the answer is nothing, please find out before you type. The practical steps: check the privacy settings of every AI tool you use regularly. Look for options to opt out of training data use, and understand which tools you are using on a free tier versus a paid tier, because the data handling terms are often quite different. And for anything that is genuinely confidential, use a tool whose privacy commitments you have verified, or keep that content out of that tool entirely. Waypoint 1, actionable step. So this week, open the settings of the AI tool you use the most, find the data and privacy section, and please read it. Make a conscious decision about whether your current settings reflect what you want, and adjust them if not. This takes 10 minutes, and most people have never done it, but you will. Waypoint 2, accuracy and hallucination. This is the risk that is most widely discussed and is still the most consistently underestimated in practice. AI tools hallucinate. This is the term used when a model produces information that is stated confidently, sounds plausible, and is wrong. It is not a bug in the traditional sense. It is a structural feature of how large language models work. They predict the most statistically likely next word or sentence based on their training data. When they do not have enough reliable information, they do not say they do not know. They generate something plausible. And plausible is not the same as true. Hallucinations range from minor to significant. Minor, the tool slightly misquotes a phrase, or attributes a quote to the wrong person, or gets a date wrong by a year. Significant, the tool invents a law that does not exist, cites a study that was never conducted, or states a regulatory requirement that is incorrect. Both types happen. The significant ones are less frequent, but they are the ones that can damage your credibility or your business if you act on them. For entrepreneurs, the highest risk areas for hallucinations are legal and regulatory information, financial guidance, statistics and research citation, and anything that is time-sensitive or jurisdiction-specific. Swiss business law, Swiss tax obligations, Swiss insurance requirements, these are areas where AI tools are working from training data that may be incomplete, outdated, or simply wrong for your specific context. Use AI to orient yourself in these areas. Use professionals to confirm. There's also a subtler version of this risk. Even when the information is technically accurate, AI tools present it with a confidence and a polish that can make it feel more settled and authoritative than it is. Something that is genuinely contested, nuanced, or context-dependent gets presented as a clean answer. And the absence of uncertainty in the output does not mean the absence of uncertainty in the underlying reality. The habit that protects you is verification for anything that matters. Do not cite AI-generated information without checking it against a primary source. Do not act on AI-generated legal or financial information without confirming it with a professional. And do not assume that because something sounds authoritative, it has been verified. Confident delivery is not a substitute for accuracy. Waypoint 2, actionable step. So this week, identify one type of information you regularly generate or verify with AI tools. Research, facts, statistics, regulatory details, anything. Choose one piece of that information from something you produced recently and trace it to a primary source. See if it holds up. The point is not to find an error. The point is to build the important habit of fact-checking. Waypoint 3. Over-reliance, skill erosion, and content ownership. These 3 risks are less dramatic than a data breach or a false legal citation, but they are more insidious because they accumulate slowly and become visible only after they have already done some damage. So I want to name each one specifically. And a note for listeners who were with us in episode 2 of this season: over-reliance, outsourcing judgment to a tool that has none. AI tools are very good at producing outputs that feel considered and balanced. They write in a register that suggests thoughtfulness, and they present multiple perspectives. They arrive at conclusions, and none of that requires them to have exercised any judgment, because judgment requires a stake in the outcome, and AI tools have no stake in anything. Over-reliance begins when you start using AI not just to help you do things, but to decide things. When you ask the tool what you should charge, how you should position your business, whether you should take a client, and what your strategy should be, the tool will answer. It will produce something that sounds considered. But it is working from patterns in its training data, not from knowledge of your specific situation, your values, your risk tolerance, or the context that only you have access to. The decisions that matter most in your business are the ones that require your judgment, not assistance, not input, your judgment. The moment you begin to outsource those decisions to a tool because the tool produces an answer faster than you can think through the question yourself, you are moving in a direction that will weaken rather than strengthen your business over time. And the check before you act on an AI output that involves a significant decision, ask yourself whether you have genuinely made the decision or whether you have simply accepted what the tool produced. If you cannot articulate why you're doing what you're doing in your own words, you have not made that decision yourself. You have delegated it. Skill erosion, losing the ability to do things yourself. This is the risk that most people dismiss and that I think deserves the most careful attention. When you use a tool to do something repeatedly, you stop practicing doing it yourself. This is not a moral problem, it's simply a functional one. Writing is thinking. When you draft something yourself, you are doing cognitive work. It shapes how you understand the thing you're writing about. When AI drafts it and you refine it, you are doing less of that cognitive work. And over time, the skill involved in the drafting begins to atrophy. This is not hypothetical. We have already seen it in adjacent domains. The widespread availability of GPS navigation has measurably reduced people's spatial memory and their ability to navigate without assistance. The widespread availability of calculators changed how people develop and maintain numeracy. Tools that remove the need to do something also, over time, remove the capacity to do it. For entrepreneurs, the skills most at risk are the ones that sit closest to your core values. Writing, thinking through problems clearly, making arguments, synthesizing information. These are precisely the skills that AI tools assist with most fluently, which means they are precisely the skills you need to protect most consciously. The practice that protects you is intentional non-use. Keep doing things without AI assistance, not always, but regularly enough to maintain the underlying skill. Write a first draft before you ask for help. Think through a problem yourself before you prompt for a structure. The skill stays sharp through use, not through intention alone. Content ownership. Who owns what AI helps you make? This is the least settled area legally and the one where the rules are changing fastest. I want to be clear that what I am sharing here is the current general picture as I understand it at the beginning of June 2026. And you should check for updates and seek professional advice if this is relevant to your specific situation. The broad picture: in most jurisdictions, copyright protection for substantially AI-generated content remains legally unsettled and often depends on the degree of human creative authorship involved in the way that human-authored content is. The legal standard for copyright protection typically requires human creative authorship. Where AI generates the content and a human edits or refines it, the situation is more complex and the degree of human creative input matters. For most entrepreneurs producing marketing content, social posts, or general communications, this is a low practical risk. The content is yours in the sense that you directed, refined it, and published it under your name. But if you are producing content that you intend to license, protect, or enforce copyright on, the question of how much AI was involved and in what way becomes much more significant. The other side of this: if you use AI tools that were trained on copyrighted material without authorization, and these tools reproduce elements of that material in their outputs, there is a theoretical risk that something in your AI-assisted content could be subject to a copyright claim. So this is an area of active litigation globally, and the legal landscape is genuinely unsettled. The practical position for most entrepreneurs: use AI tools to assist your own creative work rather than to substitute for it. Keep the human creative layer present and meaningful. If copyright matters for what you are producing, get professional advice specific to your situation and jurisdiction rather than relying on general guidance. Waypoint 3, actionable step. Pick one of the 3 risks in this waypoint that feel most relevant to how you currently work. Write 2 or 3 sentences just for yourself about what that risk looks like specifically in your business and what one concrete thing you could change or add to your practice to address it. Don't choose a project or a system, but something very specific to your situation. Takeaway and close. We started today with a premise: being clear-eyed about AI risks is not a reason to stop using AI. It is a condition for using it well. In Waypoint 1, we covered privacy and data, what goes into AI tools, where it goes, and the 10-minute habit that changes your exposure. Checking your privacy settings and making conscious decisions about what you share with which tool. In Waypoint 2, we covered accuracy and hallucination. AI tools produce confident, polished outputs that can be wrong. The habit: verification for anything that matters, and professional confirmation for anything legal, financial, or regulatory. In Waypoint 3, we covered 3 slower burning risks: over-reliance on a tool that has no judgment, skill erosion through the atrophy of the cognitive work AI removes, and the unsettled but real questions around content ownership. The common thread: the risks that accumulate slowly are the ones that require the most intentional response, because by the time they are visible, they have already been building for a while. None of this is a case against AI. It is a case for using it with the same clear-eyed attention you would bring to any powerful tool. Like, you would not use a sharp knife carelessly because it is useful. You would learn how it works, understand where it can go wrong, and develop the habits that keep the risks proportionate to the value. AI is the most powerful general-purpose tool most of us will ever work with in our professional lifetimes. The entrepreneurs who benefit most from AI long-term will be the ones who understand both its strength and its limits. So next week is already our final episode of the season 3. And I'm back with Libby O'Loughlin, and we're doing something I've been looking forward to since we started planning this season: an honest conversation about what we have each genuinely learned from working with AI over this period. What changed, what surprised us, what we got wrong. And less of a recap and more of a real conversation, and I hope you will join us for it. Until then, keep your eyes open. This is how you stay in the driving seat. And as always, all that is yours, you always carry with you.